Welcome to Becoming a Cook. I'm Charlie Wetzel. We're coming to you today from Gloucester, England, because we're visiting our very dear friends, Simon and Allie Jarvis. And when I come, I always try to cook at least one time, just for the fun of it, and give Allie a bit of a break since she's such a great host and she works really hard to take care of us. And one of the favorites here is Mexican. If you come to England, those of you who are in England know this already, there's a curry house or Indian restaurant on every corner. Well, in the US, we can't really get good curry, but there's a Mexican restaurant on every corner. Simon loves Mexican, Allie loves Mexican, so today I'm doing carnitas, and I want to teach you how to make it. If I were in the United States, I'd purchase a Boston butt, which is a pork roast. In the UK, they do a pork shoulder. So I bought a pork shoulder, and this is the first time I've purchased this cut, so I'm going to learn along with you how this is packaged. And the main thing is I'm going to cut it into cubes. So if you were working with a Boston butt, you would have to take the bone out. If you bought it boneless, you'd be good to go. This has been prepped a little different from the way it's done in the United States. This has been prepared as a roast, so it's got strings holding it. The other thing that's different in the UK is it's got the skin on it. We're not going to want that in carnitas, so I'm going to go ahead and take the skin off. And I'm going to try to leave as much of the fat and the meat on as I can because it gives moisture and flavor. I'm losing some of the fat, but it's not like I need to be eating more fat. So you can see I'm holding this. This is quite tough, and I'm just trying to run my knife and kind of saw against it. So now this is pretty much all pork. I'll take a little bit of this fat off, and then I'm just going to cut this into cubes. 1-inch cubes would be about right. You don't have to be precise with this because it's all going to go in a pot and slow cook anyway after it browns. So Allie, is this a cut that you would buy very often? Pork shoulder or not?
Yes, so pork shoulder is a budget cut, so it works really well, slow roast. It's advertised as pulled pork. Pulled pork has become big over here in the last couple of years. Yeah,
and we'd use pork shoulder for that as well.
Yeah.
So because this is so irregular, I'm just trying to find my way around it and cut little pieces however I need to.
You might have noticed that our kitchen looks an awful lot like Allie's kitchen, which says that Charlie subconsciously intended to duplicate it.
It means I longed for England and our friends. Now that I've cut all this, I want to salt and pepper it before I cook it. It may need more salt before it's over, but I'd like to start it with some. All right, now we're going to go over to the stove, or as we say in Britain, the cooker. All right, I'm heating my pan. I want to give it just a little bit of oil. I don't need very much because the pork is fatty, so you just need enough so that when it starts, it doesn't stick on the bottom. So that's probably a little more than a tablespoon, and I just want to move that around enough to give it a start. If it sizzles, that's a good sign. So I've got this heat up about as high as it will go. I want to brown the pork, and you'll find as you do this, the pork is going to release water, so I don't want to move this around. I want to get it on the pan and let it go until it starts to turn brown before I stir it, because the moment that I stir it, it's going to release all that water, and then it's going to start to steam instead of frying. So I'm actually pushing some of this meat that's kind of in the center so that it's in contact with the outside of this pan. This was about 4 pounds, but this would serve 8 people. You can see the meat that is changed from pink to kind of this gray color. That means it's cooking through. But I'm going to show you the underneath. That's the color we're looking for, that brown color. We've got some nice brown, so I'm going to give this a stir. That color is great. That's what we want. That little bit of caramelization. I'm going to tilt this so you can see. The pork has released that liquid, so now we need to cook that liquid off. I could pour that off, but I would lose the flavor, so I'd rather boil it away because then the flavor stays in, and then this will start to caramelize again. The liquid is about gone, and what's left is actually just fat from the pork. As we get close to this point, I'm going to need to turn the heat down just a little bit so it doesn't burn or scorch. If you listen, you can hear it's got more sizzle and it's wanting to stick a little bit as well. I'm going to go ahead and take it out. I'm going to lower my temperature a little bit while I'm doing this just so I don't burn the pan. All the pork is out from the first batch. I don't do anything to the pan other than turn it back up to high heat again and drop this in. If I did all the pork at once, you wouldn't be able to get that first browning bit on it because there'd be so much it would drop the temperature of the pan and the pork would simmer. And you really want the color on the pork because that caramelization gives it flavor. It's just like with a steak. You wouldn't want a steak to be just cooked through without that sear on the outside. No stirring. So come take a look at this. You can see this is starting to get nice color on it. And I actually let this one stay a little bit longer before I stirred it, so that's why it's a little bit browner than the other one. Now I want to add the first batch. And if there's any liquid or fat or anything from that, I want to go ahead and put that in as well. And then I want to get everything back up to temperature because that first one will have cooled off a little bit. There's no water, no non-fat liquid in here. The little tiny bit of liquid is fat. Even though this piece of pork looked like it had a fair amount of fat on it, it's really been pretty lean because it's not released a lot of fat. Now, I want to add about 1.5, 2 onions chopped and about 6 large cloves of garlic. I just want to dump that in right on top, and then I want to give it a stir. I need to watch the heat again on this. I've still got it on high, but I've got to be careful. I don't want to burn the onions. I just want them to get soft. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. So if you were trying to figure out proportions, this was 4 pounds of pork. So if you figure about half an onion per pound and a couple of cloves of garlic per pound. While that's cooking, I want to add seasoning. First thing I'm going to do is mild chili powder. I'm going to taste this because this is a different brand from what I'm used to. So I've got to get a sense of what kind of flavor it has. So that's good. That's mild. If you're in the U.S., a standard chili powder would work. If you're in the U.K., a mild chili powder. I've also got a hot chili powder here. I'm going to taste this and see how hot is. And Brits are famous for eating really hot curry, so hot might really mean hot. That's a lot hotter than American chili. We're not going to add any more of that. Because this is not supposed to be a spicy hot dish, it's just supposed to be flavorful. And then I'm adding cumin powder. So I would guess that I probably put about a tablespoon of the chili powder in, and maybe a tablespoon and a half or 2 of cumin. I'm going to do this by smell. I want the smell of the cumin to be stronger than the smell of the chili powder. These onions here, I've cooked a little bit too fast, so they're trying to burn. So I'm going to drop the temperature down a little bit. You don't really want the onions to brown, you just want them to get really soft and to start to incorporate with the meat. Heat back up to high, and I'm going to give it some water. I'm not going to put any kind of thickening agent in this because you want whatever liquid is with it to kind of have the flavor of a really intense gravy, but you don't want it to be a gravy per se. If the pork starts to break down, then that starts to give it a little bit of body as well. So I'm just trying to mix this really well and see what I have left in the way of liquid at the bottom. This looks pretty good. Now at this point you have one of 2 choices. You can continue to cook it on the stove at a low heat, or you could put it in a 350-degree oven for, say, an hour. The nice thing about the oven is you can throw it in there and you can forget about it. It needs a little more time, let it go another 20 minutes. I don't want to put this in the oven because this is really not an oven-safe container because it's got these rubber handles. So I'm going to cook it on the stove. The only difference really is that I have to babysit it a little bit. So I need to look at it and make sure this doesn't stick on the bottom and that the water doesn't boil away. Give this about the same hour. I've put that down to the lowest temperature. The carnitas are cooked. Now I'm going to bring them over and make a burrito. There's not a lot of liquid in them, but there's a little bit, and it's pretty thick. The meat itself has just started to break down a little bit. It's providing a little bit of that. It's almost like a gravy. You could make a bowl with this where you put it in a bowl with rice and beans and then added cheese and that sort of thing if you want to stay away from the carbs. We often do them in burritos. You could do them in tacos. I'm just going to go ahead and make one up. This is a medium cheddar. In the UK, it's more typically white. In the US, it's usually orange. I'm going to give this a little bit of black beans. A lot of times we'll do refried beans, some cilantro. Can't have too much of that. Some homemade salsa. I'll do that in another video. A little bit of sour cream.
He's never going to close that burrito.
And a little bit of guacamole. I'm being heckled today, but that's all right. Show who my heckler is. Sometimes I'll add jalapenos too, but I've already put quite a bit of jalapeno in the homemade salsa. Stephanie thinks I will not be able to fold this, but I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, let me see you pick it up.
So, this is carnitas in a burrito. That's good.